You've been asking for the recipe and I just made creamed asparagus on toast. It's what I grew up with. It's simple, it's delicious, and it's all homemade. Let's get some food on the table. While creamed asparagus isn't something you're gonna have a lot probably, or have even necessarily craved, for those that know it, I'm gonna do it very classic and how mom did it and very simple. And we're gonna start with mushrooms, cremini mushrooms. And I've just been quartering them. I leave the stems on. I don't like to waste anything. And so I have just pieces of mushroom. And now what I wanna do is really just saute them down. So I have some butter that's heating up and I just wanna put them right into it. So anytime you do mushrooms, you always hear don't crowd the pan. And that's because you want them to be somewhat of an even layer, because if there's too many of them in there, they just end up steaming as opposed to actually breaking down and cooking and sauteing. So I am going to salt them a little bit. This is gonna actually help them release some of their just natural water that's in them, but it's also gonna season them, which is super important. So my butter was not salted. And now we're just gonna let these actually cook down, and then we'll add the asparagus. You can see the mushrooms are cooking down. Every so often, I just give them a toss. Just make sure they're coated and that they're evenly cooking down. And this is the beautiful part of it. They're getting the brown color on them. They're really starting to decrease in size, and that's what you want. So when we're talking about creamed asparagus, this recipe comes from a time when asparagus was maybe coming in a lot from the garden on farms in areas where they had a lot of asparagus, and people wanted ways to use it because you used what you had economical meals and did whatever you could. And that's what creamed asparagus really is. And so it's not a recipe you hear of a lot anymore, but I think the thing is we can make sure the flavors are amazing, full and rounded and beautiful, so it's just as good today. So what I'm doing is taking the asparagus and I'm just slicing it up kind of on a diagonal, but just bite-sized pieces. And then what I'm gonna do is take a little bit of shallot. Now shallot is something that, yes, I know, not everyone always has shallot, but the thing I like about shallot is it has a little bit lighter flavor than onion, and it has almost a sweetness to it. And so it's not near as strong or as astringent as onion. I'm just slicing it up kind of. But I like the fact that it can kind of be a little bit more subdued, nuanced, shall we say. You know, we have so few ingredients going into this that you wanna make sure each one has a point and a reason so that the end result is delicious, because I think I can make a fan for creamed asparagus out of all of you maybe. So I have this all ready. My mushrooms are par cooked down. They're not quite done. So what I'm gonna do is now add in the onion or the little bit of shallot here, and then add in all of my asparagus. And what I want that to do is continue to cook with the mushrooms until it's done, because then we'll build our quick kind of white sauce over it, and it will all just be this delicious flavor impact all together. And you can see the beautiful colors that are already coming from this. There's enough butter still in there just to give it a toss. You can stir it, you can toss it, but what you can see here is we're gonna slowly cook all that down, get the asparagus to be softened and tender, and we'll move on. So I put a lid on for a little bit just to make sure I steamed the asparagus and really got it done, but you can see how everything has really cooked down. And I tested it, and how I test it, do you know how to test it? To make sure it's like the crisp, tender stage you like? You take a piece, it's perfect. Has a little bit of bite. I don't like soggy or mushy. So what I'm gonna do is take off now this mushroom, shallot, asparagus mixture. Look how beautiful it is. It still maintained that fresh, beautiful green color. You know, we're getting towards the end of asparagus season, but it's still coming in, and it all depends on weather for me when I'm growing it, because sometimes we gotta heat up early on, like this year, and then it got cool again though, so the asparagus still has plenty of time. So we're gonna let that sit there, and what we're gonna do is bring this back over, turn it kind of on low heat, and we're gonna add some more butter. So what we're gonna do now is make really butter and flour, and we're gonna mix them together to be the thickening agent. Now I'm gonna use ghee here because I like to have ghee always on hand. I like to use ghee, but you can use regular butter, whatever you have on hand. So we're gonna put that right in here. We're gonna let it melt. It's gonna take on kind of all those brown bits too, which I really like. And what we're doing here is just like you would to thicken, maybe you've made cream peas or other things. This is how my mom would always thicken something when she was gonna make a white sauce or a cream sauce. It was gonna be starting with butter and flour, and that's what we're doing. So we're melting that out, and what that's gonna be able to do is now absorb the flour. So we're gonna make a nice, beautiful, delicious, creamy sauce, and that's what's gonna actually go over our toast with the asparagus, with the mushrooms. To me, this is really nothing more than just like a humble meal that we often would have during asparagus season. My grandmas would both make it too of some type, and each person's can be a little bit different, but they're each good. So now that this is, you can tell, all the butter is melted, I'm gonna sprinkle over that flour, and I like to let it cook into it a little bit. And what I mean by that is I don't just want to keep it raw. So for about a 30 seconds to a minute, I'm gonna just kind of move this around and make sure that it cooks. And then we'll go ahead and add some other ingredients. So my butter and flour has been cooking together, and you can see that it's just kind of bubbling. And what you want to do is just make sure that raw flour flavor kind of is cooked out. That's really the main thing. And what I first do now is always add a little bit of mustard. Now, you can use Dijon. I like kind of a grainy mustard. Now, this is an interesting kind of add-in, but it adds kind of an undertone and a depth to me to a white sauce that I just really like. So I stir that in. Think of it as a little bit of acidity that can make all the difference in waking everything up. So I stir that in. Now what we're gonna start doing is adding our milk. It's that simple. So I like to add it in smaller amounts, and room temperature milk is gonna work better. And just slowly stir it in, and it's gonna slowly thicken as we do it. And each time I add it, I'm just gonna keep stirring it in. And if you think it's getting lumpy, give it time for all that flour to keep absorbing, and then eventually you'll just have a sauce out of it. So you can see it really tightens up and thickens up, and that's what flour does. It makes a white sauce. Now, when I finish mine off, I like to put in some Greek yogurt. You could do sour cream, but honestly, to me, Greek yogurt, it adds kind of a tanginess. It kind of offsets all the richness that can be in there. And I think that's really important, is to have that balance. And then with that, I definitely need to add some salt. We didn't salt it. My butter or my ghee is not salted. And then I like to add in some pepper too. So I'll always add in some good fresh cracked pepper just to make sure you drive home that, you know, again, it's something mom did, and it really does. It just kind of finishes all off. So I am going to stir this in, and you can see it just has that beautiful richness now with the yogurt. And if you haven't made a white sauce, you're probably thinking this looks kind of boring or bland. But remember, this is pretty much a carrier for all those mushrooms, the asparagus, the shallot. And that to me is what's important here. So let's grab that plate that we put all together. You can see I switched to a whisk there at the end just to make sure it was easy for me to stir in and not have any lumps with the flour. And now we're just gonna put back in the asparagus, the mushroom, the shallot. Okay, this is what I love. I love instantly you have that color, you have all those fresh flavors. I'm gonna stir this in now. And this is what it is. This is creamed asparagus. And so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna finish stirring this and just let it kind of get warm. I'm gonna slice my bread, get it toasted, which I like to do in butter in a skillet, and just make sure it has a nice crispy edge. Let this all warm through, and then we'll serve it up and add one final ingredient. That's why I like to do these in a skillet, because you get a nice crispy, buttery, I just think it's better. So I'm also using sourdough. I just like to use something crusty with a little bit more oomph to it. I think there's something special about that. So when you make this, you can really get it ready any way you like it. Now, we would always have hard-boiled egg inside of it. Mom would stir that into it, probably just for the protein, for that kind of make it a whole meal. I like to kind of serve it on top with it. It's just what I do. So you can just take your beautiful sauce and creamed asparagus. Look at all that, like that just looks good. Now, personally, before I put on the egg, I like to put on some, I'm gonna choose a goat cheese. It's one that has some herbs in it. I like the goat cheese. I think it adds a kind of, I don't know, yummy earthiness to it with a little bit of that cheese. I just think it's good. And then your egg, which, you know, you can kind of just tile that on top. Again, it gives you that protein, it gives you that hit. I'll put some good like flaky sea salt on top, maybe even of the egg. I just think that this to me is like a good meal. It's my childhood. Maybe like a little bit elevated, but honestly, this is pretty much what mom would do. Sometimes I will say, if mom was here, she would give you a shortcut and she'd say, once in a while, if I had to, I used canned cream of mushroom soup. But other times she did it like this. Guys, I'm gonna try it. I love it. What I love about it is nostalgic, yes, but super flavorful for today. You get that great white sauce that is just very simple. You get the mustard you don't notice in that sauce, but it has a really good depth of flavor. And just, it's not too in your face. It's kind of subtle, it's kind of simple, but it's there. The asparagus is just like almost al dente, if we could call it that. The egg, The salt on top really made it, but you know what was really good? That crusty bread. Do you hear that with the bread? I love when bread has that good crustiness to it with the butter. It's good, it's delicious, it's simple, it's homey, it's humble. It's what's for dinner, and that's the point. So what do I hope you do with this? I hope you put some food on the table and make this, because that's the whole point about these videos. Put food on the table, try something new, try something you haven't done. Maybe bring back some nostalgic memories. That could be what this is for you, whether it's a grandparent, a dad, someone in your life that loved creamed asparagus, or maybe you've never heard of it. Hello. As always, share these videos around. It helps me a lot, but it helps everyone else see this is possible. This is doable. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for tips, for tricks, and all my recipes. This one's up there. And until next time, make something delicious, enjoy it, and be kind. That's the point.